After all was said and done, our last video ended up being over 20 minutes long. So we decided to create this whole separate video about international travel tips. Stick around because we've got some good ones. I'm Jenny and you're watching Outside is Calling.
Intro video.
For those of you new to our channel, we are a family that travels full-time, and up until very recently, it was full-time in a motorhome. But now we've expanded our horizons and we're currently base camped in a small beach town on the Pacific coast of Panama. While traveling here, we thought it would be a great chance to talk about some of the things and some of the tips we've learned to make Come here! Oh, now you don't want me, you just want the camera? So while we were traveling here, we thought it would be a great chance to make a video and share some of the tricks that we've learned in making traveling with little kids a little bit easier.
First off, I want to start off with the airline decision, the choice of which airline you fly with. The airlines that really try to have the cheapest fares, a lot of times those airlines have really bad customer service, or they nickel and dime you to make the difference of that low fare. So what we found is that in the end, a lot of times the cheap airlines end up costing about the same as the nicer, more expensive airlines. And if you're paying the same price, you might as well go ahead and get an airline that's known to have good customer service and just a better experience for the whole thing all around. We've found that you can save a little bit of money sometimes with the cheaper airlines, but the money we saved oftentimes has not been worth the headache or the hassle.
That base.
The next thing I want to share is for those of you that have little ones or consider traveling with your little ones, children under 2 are considered or are eligible to be lap infants. And so a lap infant is just a child that sits in an adult's lap during the flight. So for those of you that have some younger children, this is actually a way to minimize the cost of traveling to different places. But this leads me to tip number 3, which is that having a child in your lap to save money on that seat may or may not be the cheapest option. You'll see in the video that we actually had a seat just for Tucker. He's less than 2 years old right now, so he could have been in one of our laps, but we started doing kind of checking and comparing the prices. Because we're traveling for a long period of time, we have a lot of bags. So I think for Spirit Airlines, if we were to check a third bag, for each of us was about $90 or $100. And keep in mind, this is each way. So to keep from getting caught up in the details, essentially having that third seat for Tucker allowed him to have 2 checked bags at a much cheaper price on the way here and on the way back. So it ended up being about $50 cheaper than us to have him as a lap infant in our lap and for us to be checking more than 2 bags per person.
Jump up the flight deck, welcome aboard Spirit Airlines Flight 487, what service to you, Panama?
Can you see there?
Captain Cherry,
You gotta sit down, little man.
in the back of our flight attendants.
Plane's gonna move.
For their care comfort, as well as safety once airborne.
Yeah.
This afternoon flight time to Panama, 2 hours, 50 minutes, welcome aboard.
So that this is not a red-eye flight.
Tip number 4, I'm sure you've heard this before, it's not rocket science, but if you can, arrive to the airport early. Something always happens. In our case, we actually got there early and we were at the front of the line, like, hey, we're good, we got plenty of time. We got to the airport with almost 3 hours to spare, We got to one of their agents pretty quickly, but then it went south. My goal isn't to slam Spirit Airlines and try and trash talk them. We've traveled with them quite a bit out of necessity, and their flights are fine, but their customer service has always been a bad experience. And this is one of those cases. The girl at the counter, she was half asleep, and she just was doing things, I mean, so slow, like as slow as molasses. And she explained that she had been there for a long time, and it was towards the end of her shift. And hey, I get it, you know, after a long day of dealing with people, that's tough. But it took her over an hour to check our 6 bags and a surfboard bag. Even though we got to the airport with enough time, because of just that one agent taking so long with our bags, we found ourselves, you know, getting through security and having a little bit of spare time, but not a lot of spare time. If we'd have gotten to the airport with less time to spare, that agent could have been the disaster for us making our flight.
I don't want it. That was in your mouth.
So for those of you who will be traveling with camera gear, the number one rule is to always bring your camera gear in your carry-on bag that goes on the plane with you. I was having a hard time making all of my camera gear fit into a carry-on bag, but then I talked with one of my professors from school, and he's traveled a lot doing different video work for National Geographic and other production companies, and what he explained was, you know, you don't need all your camera gear. What you need to do is take like your lenses, your camera bodies, just the important stuff, put that, making sure it's padded and safe, and that way you know that those will arrive with you and they're not going to get banged up on the way. An alternative, if you don't want to carry it in your carry-on bag, Pelican cases and other companies like that have these really great, very safe cases that are all padded inside, very hard shell outer case, and that's an alternative if you do need to check your camera gear down below in the plane. Also, if you have little ones, a great way to keep them occupied is to bring not just toys, but new toys and games that they haven't played with before. Now they have something new that's interesting and will keep them occupied for a while. Those new toys were actually very effective at keeping him engaged and happy versus realizing he's on a plane and can't move around and being unhappy. Another great thing we do when we have Tucker on an airplane is we get to know our neighbors right off the bat and try to be polite to them, try to engage them with Tucker and let Tucker say hello to them. What we found is that more often than not, our neighbors actually, they enjoy playing peekaboo and waving back and forth to Tucker, which really helps because I guess you could say in a way that we've kind of enlisted our neighbors in the kind of group care of your little one as you're traveling. And it really works out pretty well for us when Tucker's not sleeping. And I'll show you, there's an iguana behind the camera. Here in Panama, it's incredible. There's fruit and things in the trees you can eat everywhere, and there's iguanas and hummingbirds and all these really cool animals. One of the things we're very deliberate about is on the ascent up and the descent down, we always make sure Tucker either has something to chew on, to eat or drink, or if, you know, worst case, a pacifier. We just want his mouth moving, keeping that movement here to relieve pressure. I know a lot of kids, they don't know what's happening. They don't know what that pressure is in their ears, and some kids have a hard time, you know, kind of clearing that pressure. And so we always have snacks or drinks or a combination of those and a pacifier always handy. And so far, knock on wood, we haven't had him up in the air with angry earlobes.
So the amount of time you spend traveling to get from A to B is definitely a big deal when you have children. As Jesse mentioned, there were a few reasons that we went with Spirit Airlines to get here to Panama, and I would say the biggest reason we decided to go with Spirit is they had a direct flight from Orlando to Panama City. It said it was 3.5 hours. It ended up being just less than 3 hours, and that was definitely a game changer for us, not having to worry about layovers with Tucker and the commotion involved with that. It was a quick flight. It was about the same amount of time that we would keep him in his car seat for a regular trip in the car or the RV. So that was a really big, helpful thing that we did on this trip specifically. We got a direct flight and limited our time traveling in one day with Tucker.
Tucker's getting ready to have his passport stamped.
Video.
Oh.
All right.
All right. Woo! Tucker! Panama!
Welcome.
Gracias.
So since having Tucker, the only major international travel that we've done was Baja, Mexico, and now Panama. When we traveled up and down through Baja, I was in our motorhome, so I had the luxury of stuffing that thing to the gills with the diapers I was familiar with the formula that Tucker had, so I really didn't have to buy any baby products that I wasn't familiar with. But coming to Panama, we flew here, and so I had to be a little more picky about what we packed and what we wanted to buy here. So the larger items were kind of a no-brainer. We were not going to fly with a pack and play for him to sleep in or a high chair. And aside from that, we are about 10 minutes away from a very established town, and we did a little bit of research beforehand and found out that we would be able to buy those things here. Diapers and stuff we can absolutely buy here as well, although I did bring the diaper rash cream that we are used to using, Desitin. I found when we were in Mexico that what they sold was very different than what we had in the States, so that is something that I did pack plenty of, and we brought all of the Desitin that we normally use. I also packed a handful of the pouches, those pureed fruit and vegetable pouches. Those were just really easy to use for the travel portion of us getting here to Panama, but Panama does have those in their grocery stores, the fruit and vegetable pureed pouches. So I didn't bring a whole lot of those. Now the home that we're staying in only has showers, and at home, living in an RV, we were used to using a collapsible bathtub, and I really struggled with bringing that one or not. I really wanted to bring it, but when it came down to it, we ended up just buying a Tupperware tote, and it's basically the same thing that we use in the RV, but easier to find when you're traveling international. We did bring Tucker's stroller with us. That was a huge lifesaver in the airport, and that made it worth it on its own. It's a little bit bigger than most strollers, and none of the ticket agents like seeing us walk up to the gate with such a big stroller, but for us, we will pay to bring that thing with us. We love Tucker's stroller. We also ordered through Amazon stroller bags and car seat bags to use when we're traveling. You can get them just about anywhere, but the ones that we ended up buying, they're super thick and durable. And we've been on a few flights now and haven't had a single rip or tear or issue with his car seat or his stroller coming back damaged. So we'll try to link those below, as well as like the stroller that we use, little things like that. We did buy a travel car seat harness. Now the idea behind this is that you use a regular car, the seat belts, the seat cushion itself, and you buckle the harness in. It is DOT approved in the United States. I don't know about other countries. We weren't able to use it on this trip. Tucker's a little bit too small. It's rated for children 3 years and up. So we were kind of just hoping that we could make it work, but he's a little bit too small this time around. But it's an excellent option for those of you who travel often, and specifically to places that you may not be able to rent or buy a car seat. This thing can go anywhere, on airplanes, on boats, in cars, just about any vehicle you'd be able to use it. So that's an excellent option to use for when you're traveling. We'll link that below too.
Be sure to check out the playlist we're creating of our travels and adventures here in Panama. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any comments or tips yourself, please leave them in the comments below. We'll see you next time.